Marry me. So I want to review a book. The book I want to review is Pop Culture Systems by Taylor Ellwood. How to create your own pop culture magic system. I do love this one on the side. Ancient Greek gods plus a Funko Pop is like magic. So this is a companion book to Ellwood's Pop Culture Magic, especially Pop Culture Magic 2. You probably won't have to have read Pop Culture Magic to be able to use this book, but it is strongly advised that you have. At least you should have some experience with the idea of pop culture magic. So, real fast, what it is, basically pop culture magic is magic done using, well, pop culture. It bases itself around the idea that pop culture is the mythology of today. That pop culture and the various stories that we are presented through books and TV shows and comic books and the like have the same place in our lives as stories of the gods of Olympus or the Norse gods and so on and so forth had in the lives of our ancestors. And that for a lot of people growing up today, Superman would have you would resonate stronger with the concept of Superman than you would with the story of Hercules. Even if it's basically, if we look at it from the perspective of the Jungian hero's journey, is basically the same character. So pop culture magic uses pop culture in magic in various ways. Excuse me, this thing just started. My TV just started making sounds for some reason. Anyway, it is off now. This book basically tells you how to make a magic system out of it. While Pop Culture Magic 2 was mostly about basically the concept and some ideas of how to use it, this is less about basically how to figure out a single working on it and how to basically make a whole spiritual system around the pop culture. It is presented for advanced magical practitioners, and to a certain degree I do agree with that, because this isn't a book with spells and ready-made ideas of this is how you practice magic. You need to have some knowledge of how magic works to make this book usable for you. So let's get to the chapters. I think there's a chapter in here. Yes, here we are. They are, however, not that necessary to read up because they're usually named chapter 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. Most of the book are Taylor Ellwood himself telling you about this topic, and then there are three appendices where three other people are telling about their experiences with making pop culture systems. Now, I have some problems with this book. One is that it's so undetailed. And I know that Taylor Ellwood some sort of presents it that is how he wants it, that he doesn't want it to be as basically a step-by-step guide, but more telling about the concepts. Yes, but that also makes it less valuable. At least in my opinion. Basically, there are some examples here, but I miss more examples and more concrete examples, less a little tidbit here and a little tidbit there about how he has done this, and more about basically a step-to-step guide about how to do this. I do get this presents the technology, the idea of how to do it, basically what you should consider, what pop cultures would be usable for you to make into a magic system, what elements you need to have in a magic system to make it workable, and all that is great. There's definitely a lot of good things in this book. And furthermore, since it discusses making magic systems, this doesn't just have to be pop culture. You can use what you learn in this book to help you make magic systems completely on your own, or make magic systems using more traditional means. It tells you how to, for example, add a pop culture reference onto an existing system, for example, using the Ninja Turtles as representatives of the classical elements, but also how to use your own ideas to make a magic system of it. But it needs more examples to be made clear. I think that it would be easier for people to use the book if there was more concrete examples and ideas for how to do it. It presents the technology, but there is a reason why a lot of tech manuals also comes with quite a few examples. And there are some examples in here, but it just isn't enough. My other complaint about this book is that there is a lot of typos here, and especially the typos where you have missing words or missing letters in words, which makes the grammar sort of off. Now, like I said, I have dyslexia, so I should be the last person complaining about somebody's grammar. But when it is in a professionally published book, and there is this extent of it, that it at times makes reading harder, because I very often have to stop and think, what is he saying here? This sentence makes no sense until I manage to deconstruct it and figure out where is the error, and then eventually making sense of it. Then it becomes issue reading. And it's completely fine when there's somebody discussing something on a forum or on Facebook or something like that. That's not professional, but this is a professional done book by an author who has written a lot of books, and then that degree of basic spelling and grammar errors makes the book seem a bit sloppy. It feels just cobbled together. Like, as I have reviewed a lot of homemade books before, published through Lulu and other such things, and then I'm much more tolerant of such errors. But when it is in a professionally published books like this, it's sort of, you would expect better. Taylor Ellwood have the resources to afford somebody to read over his work and catch some of those errors. So yes. Now, other than that, there is a lot of good information in here. I definitely got some ideas while reading this for things I would like to do with pop culture magic, which I have been practicing long before I knew there was a name for it. And it is a decent book when it comes to figuring out how to work with making your own magical systems. I just wish the book at times were more clear. You should also be aware that while Ellwood do present it as base, and I mean, he in no way push his point of view at you, but the book definitely have a paradigm it's talking from. He is working a lot with shamanism, and it works very much from the spirit and energy model. So that the main focus is working with pop culture spirits. That would be basically seeing a character from a book or a TV show and so on as a spirit. And that is a very, very interesting point of view, but he spends very little time discussing how to make a non-religious magic system. A magic system that doesn't necessarily deal with these as spirits. For example, there are mentions of basically taking the magic system from some part of pop culture, and making that into something that you can work with as an occultist. But it doesn't include a lot of details. There is far more details when it comes to how to work with characters as spirits. So there's that. If that is something you are interested in working with, this book is awesome. If you are more into taking a magic system and making it workable, then this book might have less to offer for you. I think it is an interesting book, though, like I said, it feels a little bit quickly put together. And it's not very big. I would probably have preferred it if this was just part of modern magic, pop culture magic 2, than as its own compendium. I would rather have paid a bit more for that book than to have this edition. But as it is, it's a completely okay little book, and I do tend to pick up anything about pop culture magic that I can find, because it isn't something that a lot of people are talking about. And I mean, as he points out, there still is an enormous stigma against the pop culture magic within the occult community. So, I mean, I quickly learned that that's just not something that you talk about if you want to be taken seriously as an occultist. And even now, when I do a working that involves pop culture, I am terrified that somebody will one day find my Book of Mirrors and read them and read these, because it's not considered a mature thing to do. And I think that's very narrow-minded, because magic is made all the time. There was a time when the magic that we now consider classical and now considered basically the established rules for magic were also new. And I do believe that it's often easier to relate to pop culture than to the ideas of religion that went out of common practice several thousand years before you were born. For example, I often use my old action figures for protection spells, simply because it's ingrained in me that these various characters are badass fighters that would be awesome at protecting, and as such it gets that vibe from me, if you get what I mean. So yeah, I really like that there are more books about pop culture out there. However, this book doesn't really have the quality of Ellwood's other books. Though I still did really enjoy reading it. I do like the little essays in the back from other authors discussing this topic, because then you get 3 very different voices. And I do like the general ideas. Basically, I would say that in reading this book, I have learned more about making my own magic system than I had before I picked up this book and read it. I just wish it went into more detail. And yeah, so I can't give it a full pot of points when it feels very rushed. But it is still quite an interesting book, and I am very glad I read it. I'll give it 6 out of 10. And that is my review of Pop Culture Systems: How to Create Your Own Pop Culture Magic System by Taylor Ellwood. And it's published by Megalithica Books. Isn't it? Yes, it is. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed this review. Have a great day and have a blessed full moon.